This is Super Yacht News in association with Go Earth Boating, navigating boat buyers to better deals. Hi, welcome back to the channel. So you might remember in our last video we told you about a yacht being boarded in the Bahamas, on Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Motor yacht Odin was boarded by authorities there, and everybody on board was arrested because the vessel had unlicensed firearms on board. A big cache of weapons, and anyway, we're going to give you an update on that story. Now that they've already been into court and they've already given out a sentence, and the vessel has been actually spotted. One of our subscribers sent in some video footage here showing the vessel arriving back in Fort Lauderdale, I believe it is, and the vessel arrived back there under police escort, under a US police escort. In actual fact, you can see in this video footage here that the police actually board the yacht whilst it's still underway. A number of police, I would say 7 or 8 police officers are on board there, and they came in on boats. Well, the yacht was still arriving into that location, and they boarded that vessel. Now they can be heard shouting something, and I've tried everything to try and enhance the audio to hear what they're saying, but couldn't quite make out what they're saying. But as you can see, boarded the vessel. Now, going back to what happened before the vessel managed to get back to the US, because I was surprised actually that it managed to return to the US so quickly. The owner of the vessel, his name is James Finkel. He's a 62-year-old former head of a US-based Finkel Steel, which is one of the world's largest steel companies. He was arrested on board. He was on board the vessel because we didn't know in the previous video whether the owner was on board or not. But he was on board and he was arrested. The police searched the yacht upon arrival, as we said in the last video, and it was at the Mega Marines Resort in Bimini. This is a local newspaper reporting, and they've got the wrong date. This is the 12th of October. It was on the 21st of October. Finkel apparently told police that he had 2 weapons on board in a safe, because it's not necessarily illegal to carry weapons in the Bahamas, but they do have very tight regulations, which we'll go into in a minute. But when they searched, they found actually 8 weapons inside that safe, and with ammunition, and they also found another cache of firearms, which was in a closet on the vessel. So they did a search. Like I said in the last video, it was they were acting upon intelligence, which means somebody's tipped them off that he was arriving there with all of those weapons on board for whatever reasons that may be. In a previous video, actually, in numerous previous videos where we've talked about firearms, and in this one as well, if you go to the comments of the previous video, should I say, where we reported on this story, people are talking about concealed compartments on board the yacht, etc. The thing is, if somebody knows they're there, like in this instance, if somebody informs the police, a hidden compartment won't help you at all, plus the fact that it's illegal. And this is what happens if you try to illegally import weapons into another country and they find them, right? His attorney that he hired once this happened, he said his client is a frequent visitor to the Bahamas. So that means he must know, right? He must know the rules. He's a gun enthusiast, a firearm enthusiast. That's what the defense attorney described him as. So he knows the rules, right? In actual fact, we looked on a website, which is a US-based website, I believe, which is actually a gun website. The website's called gunzone.com. I think it's .com. Yeah. And it says, and the question is, are firearms allowed in the Bahamas? And basically, the short version is, it says, firearms, the short answer is generally no, with the very strict regulations and limited exceptions. It's illegal for tourists, which is what he is, and most residents to bring firearms to the Bahamas. Violations of Bahamian firearm laws carry severe penalties, including hefty fines, imprisonment, and firearm confiscation. So that's what it says. That's a gun website. Now, we're going to get into what the actual Bahamas law says about it shortly. Now, what they found on board, they found 10 pistols, including a number of semi-automatic pistols, an AR-15 300 rifle, an SR-556 rifle, a Remington bolt action rifle, and a 12-gauge shotgun and ammunition for all of those. So a lot of ammunition. So that's what they found on board. Now, some of those are classed as high-powered weapons, and that's a law. That's a thing in law, right? So they don't just say that for the sake of it. And I'll explain that in a second. Now, as part of the plea agreement, Finkel pleaded guilty to 27 firearm-related charges before the magistrate Lennox Colby. These included 4 counts of possession of an unlicensed firearm with intent to supply, 7 counts of possession of ammunition with intent to supply, 2 counts of possession of an unlicensed firearm, 1 count of possession of an unlicensed shotgun, 7 counts of possession of ammunition, and 6 counts of possession, a component part of a firearm. So he actually was fined. So he was actually sentenced to 6 years in prison or pay a fine of $1.4 million. And they said upon payment, his vessel would be returned and he'd be advised to leave the country once the fine is settled. I doubt very much that he would have got any of those weapons back. They would most likely have been confiscated. So now what's interesting about this is that the fine, which was handed down by a magistrate, it comes despite, this is according to a website called the Tribune, which is the local Bahamas website. It says that it comes despite a 2021 Court of Appeal ruling that magistrates have no authority to impose non-custodial sentences for firearm-related offences. So that's very interesting in itself. But one of the senior attorneys speaking to the Tribune, which is that website I just mentioned, on condition of anonymity, called the outcome highly irregular and unlawful, but suggested that it's likely to stand because it was agreed by the prosecutors as part of the plea deal. So that's interesting, isn't it? Now, what does the Bahamian law say about possession of firearms? This is the 1969 law, so it's not a new thing. Section 15.2, any person who purchases, acquires, or has in his possession, uses or carries a gun without a license, therefore shall be liable to a conviction of on information, to imprisonment for a term being in the range of 10 to 15 years. Now, what does it say about high-powered weapons, which is what he was convicted of? 30A, it says a person who, without express permission of the licensing authority, manufactures, sells, transfers, purchases, exports, imports, transits, acquires, or has in his possession any high-powered firearm is defined in the Act, commits an offence and is liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment of 25 to life imprisonment. So that's pretty severe, isn't it? So that's what he could have got. And so he was very fortunate, I think. He was awarded 6 years in prison or a $1.4 million fine, right? So going back to that website that we just read from, the gunzone.com, it says there, Bahamas maintains a strict stance on firearm control. This policy is designed to maintain public safety and minimize gun violence on the islands. Bahamian laws concerning firearms are rigorously enforced, and understanding these regulations is crucial for anyone visiting or residing in the country. So I think regardless of how you feel about who should be allowed to own firearms, the laws are set in place, and Mr. Finkel arrived on the islands with all of these weapons which were unlicensed, and apparently it was with the intent to sell or to provide to other people on the island. So which is illegal importation, right? So I think he's very lucky to have got away with what he did. I find it a bit dubious that a court can offer a prison sentence or a large fine like that. That's the updates. The vessel arrived back in Florida, like I said at the beginning of this video, and you could see that the police boarded it. Now, we don't know currently what the police boarded for. I would imagine they boarded for the same reasons as were boarded in the Bahamas. The police obviously would have been informed about what had happened down there, and they're probably going to do a massive search of that vessel now to make sure there are no other weapons on board. Now, he might have been legally allowed to carry and own those weapons in Florida, right? So they were only illegal because he was in the Bahamas. It's a different country. It's also possible that he wasn't legally allowed to carry those weapons in the US either, right? You know, you have to register your weapons, I believe, in Florida as well. So if they were not registered in Florida, then he stands to get in trouble there as well. Now, if the Bahamian government gave back those weapons after, you know, they put him on his yacht and sent him away, and he arrives back in the US with those illegal weapons, then maybe they boarded for that reason. Now, if that was me, I would have just thrown them over the side on the way home. So we've got one more story before we go. This concerns Motor Yacht Loon's former captain, Paul Clark. The case against Captain Clark will go ahead in Broward County, despite an attempt by him to have the case thrown out. The lawyers representing the former captain said that Paul Clark was not a resident of Broward County in Florida, and therefore the court had no jurisdiction.
Actually, currently I have a 32-foot Everglades that's behind my house in Florida.
They're going ahead with the case anyway because they tried a motion to dismiss, right? So it looks like that didn't work. The Broward County Circuit Court has set a date for the trial to commence, which is the 12th of October, 2026. So next year, a year from now, more or less. And it will run till the 30th of October. So a whole year before that court case will start. Now, there is going to be a deposition of one of the plaintiffs in the case in November this year, Natalia Niznik, who I believe was one of the original people to file this motion at this case. She was thrown from the vessel when the vessel hit the rocks, and she suffered severe facial injuries, I understand. So she's going to be deposed. That's coming up in November this year. Now, we'll bring you an update on that once we have it. All right, guys, I'll leave it there. Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments of these stories. Always an interesting one when we do anything about firearms and yachts. So we get more comments than any other subject, I think. So I'll leave it there, guys. Like I said, talk about it in the comments. And yeah, I'll get back to you soon on any updates. Now, if you're interested, we've got another video coming out on Sunday. In part 2, we'll look at the technical side, including an engine room tour with the captain, a look at the crew mess, the galley, laundry room, and an extended look at the bridge. It's the second part of our 1931 yacht Marala tour. It's a technical tour, so look out for that. It'll be coming out on Sunday. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and all that jazz, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.